Your client hated your work. What do you do? Imagine landing the client of your dream on Upwork, and the first week you run into an issue where the client questions your work and questions your ability to even complete the job. What would you do in that situation? In this video, I'm going to cover everything so you know exactly what to do. The first and most important thing that I recommend in this scenario is that you need to take a step back and take an unbiased approach to the exact sequence of events that occurred, which led to where you are today. So from the time that you got the contract to all the communication that occurred, and then to the point where the client said to you that either A, they don't like your work, they don't like the fact of what you presented, or anything else that has occurred, where the client actually now questions your ability and either takes away some of the work or reduces the project, you need to go back and look at it in its finest detail. And what you're going to do over there is look for issues that you think may have come up during that process. Maybe there was a conversation where they question your skill. Maybe there's a conversation where you didn't get along on a certain point and they had a different perspective and you had a different perspective. Maybe there's a gap in communication. Every single time you feel like something came up, make a note of it and write that down. So in essence, what you're doing is you're doing an audit of the process from the first day of communication where you got the job, and then however long it took. So maybe it took a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, or 2 months, where it got to the point where something happened and the client questioned your ability or said that they're going to reduce the work. You're going to audit the entire process. And that's important because when you audit the process, then you can start piecing together and figuring out exactly what went wrong at what time and what was your reaction. And that's the most important thing to do over here. Rightfully so, the second step over here, right after your audit, is going to be making a plan to ensure that never happens again. And how do you do that? Let's just say in the first point, when you're doing your audit, you found out that there was a lack of communication on certain days where the client was asking you for an update over and over again. And for whatever reason, maybe you're busy with other work, maybe something happened, but you did not communicate in a timely fashion. Right then and there, you can make that a point and say, for next time, whenever the situation occurs and a client asks for an update, you're going to reply back sooner than what you did in this scenario. Or you could even take it one step further and say that I don't want even the client to get to that point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide the client with a daily update, or maybe it could be every other day update, so that the client feels that they're always aware of what's going on, to avoid the situation where there's a communication gap and the client has to reach out to you and say, what's going on with the project, or where are you with this certain part of the project right now? So, and if it was a communication issue, that could be a step that you could take to ensure that doesn't happen again. If it's an issue on your skill, then in that scenario, you could say to yourself that I'm going to invest more time and energy to improve my skill, because the client in the first part of the audit, when I went through the conversations, I realized the client was saying to me, I don't think you know exactly what you're doing in this specific step. If that comes up in your audit, then for the second point, what you're going to do is you're going to make a plan to work on the skill. Maybe it's taking more courses. Maybe you're going to watch more YouTube videos. Maybe you're going to do more research, or maybe you're going to work on that exact skill so that doesn't happen again. And what you're going to do in this scenario is that you're going to look at all the scenarios that occurred in your audit and then make solutions and then implement those solutions to avoid that scenario repeating again. And that would be the second point. The third point over here is that you must understand that this is all part of the process. Upwork as a business is a business where you are dealing with people on a regular basis. It could be 10 people a week, 10 people a month. It could be 10 people every 2 months, whatever the number is. But you're dealing with the high volume of people because you're bidding for jobs. At the same time, when you land those jobs, you're working with teams. And then, for example, when you're working with those teams, they may introduce you to other teams that they're working with as well. So you're dealing with a high number of people. And just like in life as well, with your own friends, family, and maybe even your own school environment or your work environment where you work full time right now, there are going to be people that you like and you get along with, and people that you don't like and you don't get along with. But you have to understand it's part of the process over here too. And a lot of times what I find is that people get actually offended when they're freelancing on Upwork when someone questions their skill or says that I don't think you're really qualified over here, or maybe there's a lack of communication over here. They take it offensively, but they don't understand and they don't realize that you have to understand that this is part of the process where you're going to deal with people who may agree with you and may disagree with you. There may be a difference of opinion, but as long as you understand the fact that this is natural and is meant to happen on a regular basis, maybe on an infrequent basis, The sooner you understand that and internalize that, the less of an impact that's going to happen to you when a client comes and questions your ability or questions your skill or questions your consistency or your work ethic. The fourth point is that remember one thing. Upwork is not a full-time job in the sense that you are employed with an actual employer. In that scenario, you can take some time away from Upwork without any consequences. Obviously, when you're employed for a full-time job, you can't just get up and leave one day and say, hey, I'm going to take maybe a few days away and I'm going to come back to you. It doesn't work like that. But with Upwork, let's just say you have a scenario where you're dealing with a client and the interaction did not go as planned. The client ended the contract early, maybe they requested for a refund, whatever the scenario is. But after that situation occurred, you could say to yourself that I don't feel the greatest right now. I had a really terrible experience. This was ongoing for 2 months or 1 week. And it really put me in a situation where I think I need to take some time away. And you're okay to do that because in that scenario, you don't need to apply for other jobs. If this was the one contract that you had and this was the main contract, you could simply say that, okay, this occurred. I need to take some time away and I'll get back on Upwork maybe in a few days, maybe in a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month, whatever you need. And you have that luxury. So take advantage of that luxury that you wouldn't have if you had a normal 9 to 5 job, where in that scenario, if something occurred, you're expected to be back at work the next day. If you're not back at work and performing, obviously that's going to be an issue and could be a cause of termination down the road. But with Upwork, you have the flexibility. So I advise you take it if needed. The fifth point over here is that don't take it personally. A lot of times and a lot of scenarios I've noticed where people have come to me and asked me for advice, what ends up happening is that a client may have said something and they say that I don't like your work, or maybe this was not up to par, whatever the scenario was. In that situation, for a lot of people, they actually internalize this and take it personally as if they're attacking them as a person. And I get it. Sometimes the client is actually attacking you as a person. And that occurs as well. I understand that. And I never say that's a good thing because it should always be about the project itself and not about the person. But even if the client crosses the boundary and starts attacking you as a person, never take that personally. Because remember one thing, you were hired by the client to perform a job. That's it. It was not your personality to get along with that person. That's not what you're hired for. You are simply hired for a skill, to perform that skill, and to get the job done. So it has nothing to do with you as a person, and it has nothing to do with the client. I understand sometimes emotions get involved, sometimes other aspects of our lives get involved, and it becomes an emotional decision where the client thinks that this is something that they're attacking you as a person, or the client thinks that you're attacking them as a person, and it gets very messy. But you need to untangle that a little bit. And when the situation occurs, so let's just say, as an example, the client is asking for a refund and they're attacking you and saying that, I knew from the beginning the type of personality that you had, you're someone that never, puts enough effort into their work, and they're going on and on about you. At that point in time, rather than responding back in a heated manner and then attacking the client or their business or their company or their other employees, take a step back and understand that it's not about you. The client could be frustrated at 100 different reasons. And maybe something happened within their own business, maybe something happened at home. Whatever the situation is, keeping in mind the fact that it's not about you, so don't take it personally. And in a scenario where the client is personally attacking you, you need to take a step back, inform them the same thing that I'm informing you right now, which is the fact that you were hired to perform a task. They hired you to perform this task. Let the client know as well and educate them and tell them that don't make this personal. Don't make this about you as a freelancer. And likewise, you are not also going to make it personally about them as a person either. Instead, the focus should be on the skill at hand, the task at hand, and that's it. Because it's only a transaction of that. It was not a contract based on alignment of personalities, alignment of thinking, or any of those things. The sixth point over here, after you've done your audit and after you've done everything else, is that now you want to focus on developing yourself and growing yourself. And we want to take specific actions for that. So for example, when you did your audit, let's just say there was a scenario where you felt that I did not know enough about this specific skill in terms of what I offer, right? Because no one's perfect. Just because I'm a digital marketing expert doesn't mean I know everything about digital marketing from A to Z. Just because I'm an engineer and I offer my service on Upwork, it doesn't mean I know everything about engineering from A to Z. And a client may have asked a scenario or something from me where I wasn't 100% comfortable, and the client called me out on it, saying that the work was not what they wanted it to be, right? Maybe it was an example of you're a content writer, and you submitted a draft and the client goes that I didn't like it though. It's subjective, but they said they didn't like it. In that scenario, what you want to do is focus on developing that skill. So if something happened where you felt like your skills were lacking, what you want to do is either focus on maybe watching a few YouTube videos, maybe working on that skill again, focusing on doing some research on that skill. Maybe you have to take another course on that skill, or maybe reach out to peers in your industry and ask them that for that specific skill set, what did they do in that scenario to help them grow? Maybe you have to get on a few video calls with your friends or peers in the industry and work on that skill together. Because as I mentioned before, no one's perfect. So let's just say the example is digital marketing and the client goes to you that you need to create a website from scratch. And you said that, okay, I'll try it, but I'm not the best in it. In that scenario, if something doesn't go right, you could then reach out to a peer in your industry and say, I want to sit down with you. I want to go through the process of developing a website from scratch. And can you teach me the basics? Because I knew a little bit of it though, but it was not enough and it was not to the satisfaction that the client desired. So you want to fill that gap. If it's an issue about communication, maybe you as a person, you have a very bad habit of communicating. And that's something that's been there from the beginning. Maybe you have to take a course on this. Maybe you have to watch a few YouTube videos on this. Maybe you have to internally have that conversation with yourself to understand why you're not doing certain things. And that's where the element of personal growth comes in. Maybe it's a mindset opportunity where you're thinking to yourself that in the mindset that I have right now, I start getting very lazy and I start thinking to myself that the client should be chasing after me if they want an update, not the other way around. So maybe it's about reframing the mindset over here. Whatever the situation is, this is the opportunity in point number 6 to invest in yourself, whether it's investing time in yourself, maybe paying for something, investing in a course in yourself, or anything like that in order to develop yourself so that does not happen again. And the last point that I want to share in this video, and I think this is probably the most important point. However, I left it at the end just because it kind of summarizes everything. And that last point is this. What you want to do is develop a client management process when you're dealing with clients on Upwork. And this is so crucial. The reason why that is that most client issues that occur usually fall in a few categories. Obviously, there are exceptional cases everywhere, but most client issues fall into certain categories. Either they fall in the category of communication issues. So client communicates something else, you did something else, or there's a lack of communication. So it's around the communication aspect of it. Number 2, personality misalignment. The client's personality is someone who's a bit more of a go-getter, maybe a hustle mentality where they're always on the go, always on the ball, always working on something. You're a person that takes a more methodical approach. When you get a task, you take a few days to first think it through, right? There could be a clash over there. So there's a personality clash. That's the second scenario as well. And I typically find that the skill scenario is usually not as much of an issue when it comes to client and freelancer issues. It's there, I agree, but I feel like communication and personality sometimes are more of an issue than the skill one, but that's there as well as a third one as well. So in this scenario, when you identify these 3 areas as being problematic, what do you want to do in the situation in terms of client management process? So for example, one thing that I recommend in terms of addressing the communication issue is that giving regular updates. And I cannot overemphasize this. No one in this world ever had an issue with you over communicating. There's always going to be an issue with you under communicating. By over communicating what you're doing, what task you're working on, what difficulties you're going through, what things you achieved, the client always has a level of satisfaction that they can hop in and out in terms of the project at hand, and they can go check on Slack or check on their email or through Upwork chat, and they always have a feeling and they have an understanding of what's going on with you. And that leads to less questions when you bill them at the end of the week and they go, okay, I understand that why the bill might have been a little bit higher this week, because I remember I was reading something through the channels a few days ago and they had mentioned an issue that they were facing. They had mentioned that they go and connect with support due to a certain issue, right? So that over communicating part, I feel like resolves a lot of issues, first and foremost. At the same time with communication as well, you want to make sure whatever tasks are being assigned to you, you understand them to their fullest degree. A lot of times what happens is that we don't want to question something because we feel like the client will think that we don't know what we're talking about. So the client may say something, we don't 100% understand it, and then we go do a task and complete a project, and the client goes, but I never asked for that. But you were then too shy or embarrassed to follow up and make sure you clarify it in the beginning. So what I recommend over here is making sure that whenever a task is being assigned, whenever a project is being discussed, that you go to the full length and make sure and say that I need to make sure that I understand everything to its fullest depth. So I apologize. Maybe I'm asking very basic questions, but it's for my own satisfaction. And I don't think there's any client out there. I mean, again, there's exceptions, but for the majority, I don't think there's any client out there that would say, oh, why are you asking me too many questions? Why is this? They actually feel happy that you're taking the time and the opportunity to learn more about the project. Okay. So from a communication point of view, those are a few things that can be done in terms of developing a client management process. In terms of a personality point of view, this one is a little bit tricky, but at the same time, you want to first figure out what is the personality of the client. Are they someone who is, always expecting a morning update? Are they someone who's more of the project comes in and they want a quick update right off the bat? Or there's someone who's always pushing a project every single day, thinking about different things? What is their personality when it comes to their work and their business? And you want to do your best to mimic that, but at the same time, don't lose your own personality in the process. So, as an example, if you notice that your client's temperament is more go, 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 you can go into that system by saying that, okay, I'm going to do a bit more of that personality as well. So I align up better with that client. And I'm going to be a bit of that go, go, go type of person though. So I get a project and I'm on the go. I'm making advancements. I'm making pushes right on the first day. But you don't want to do this to the point that it affects your personality. Okay. So again, as I'm saying, is that understanding the client's personality and mimicking that personality enough that the client sees that you are fitting into the mold of who they are as a person. Because for a lot of people who are business owners, they run the business the way that their personality is. So there's someone who is pushing, or maybe there's someone who has their hands in different departments. I, for example, work with different owners and there are certain owners that are very hands off. There are certain owners that they want to have their hands in every single department and they want to know what's going on. You may say to yourself, I'm a very shy person. I don't want to give you an update until the project is completed. But the client may be someone who needs to know what's going on and needs to get an update. In that scenario, you want to mimic that personality a little bit and say, okay, fine, I'll give you those updates over here. I'll do a bit more over here. Because that would show the client that you are someone who fits under their mold of what they want in terms of their company and the people that they want employed as well. It's very important that at this point in time, we don't want to repel someone away by saying that, well, this is my personality. This is how I do things. And you need to adjust to me. As a freelancer, you don't have that control, especially in the beginning. As you develop the relationship and as you go further and further and become a long-term client, you can try to mold them here and there, yes. But in the beginning, in terms of the client management process, you want to take that step in terms of molding yourself towards where the client is. In this scenario, one thing that has worked really well for me in the client management process when dealing with a skill issue is that right off the bat, when I get the project, I make it very clear to the client that these are the skills that I'm really strong in, and these are the skills that I'm not as strong in. And once I do that, I make it clear that I understand for this project, I may be required to do things that are outside of my scope of expertise. I get it. And I'm willing to do those things as well, because obviously sometimes for clients, it's easier to hire one person to take care of everything rather than hiring 30 different freelancers to take care of small things that each person can do and cannot do. But because I made it clear, then the client does not have a false expectation. The worst thing in the world, and this is something that a mistake that I used to make all the time before too, was that I was so grateful to get a job. The minute I got the job and the client would ask me, oh, so are you comfortable? Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I know everything. Don't worry. And the client would ask me, something else. And they'd say, oh, are you comfortable with this part? I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's okay. I know exactly what to do. However, at the same time, in my own mind, I had no idea what to do in that scenario, but I was so grateful to get that job that I would just simply just make up anything and just say, yeah, I'll figure it out along the way. And that's the way I would justify in my mind that because I'll figure it out along the way, magically I'll figure it out. But then I realized that scenario sets up a false expectation. Nowadays, as I've matured in this freelancing industry, I understand the fact that it's okay to say, I can't do these things, but I can do these things. Just so you're aware. And a lot of times in my own personal example as well, there's been 2 or 3 examples recently where someone hired me for something and they said, I want to reach out to you to have a conversation and I want to hire you for this role. And as soon as they finished speaking, the first thing I said to them was, I just want to make it very crystal clear. What you're looking for, I don't have it. I don't have this. However, in terms of what you're looking for, there are about 30 to 40 or 50 or 60% of those components I actually do have as well. So I just want to make that clear rather than you getting someone else, that can do all these things and all of a sudden they don't have half the skills. I want to make that clear. And the client was so impressed by that they're like, just because you said that, we're going to hire you for those things. We'll find somebody else for something else though. But just the fact that you said that, we know exactly what we're getting with you. because we've had certain scenarios in the past, and the clients have told me, where we've hired someone who said yes to everything and it hasn't worked out. And we'd rather go with someone who is saying, being honest with me and saying, I can do this and I cannot do this. And that has been a much smoother relationship. So from the client management process, when you're talking about your skill being an issue where the client questions your skill, or there's a issue comes tomorrow where the client goes, I never expected you to do something in this way and it should have been much better. If you make it clear right from the beginning what you can do, where your skill is and where your skill isn't, then in the client management process, there's less of an issue that will come up in the future about that, because you've already communicated something. And if then in that scenario you've communicated something, the level of back and forth that would happen on that are going to be significantly reduced. In conclusion, what I'm going to say is that just remember one thing. Upwork as a business is a business of dealing with people day in and day out, day in and day out. Once you understand and embrace that process, you'll get much better at dealing with the people who are the good people, who are the bad people, the so-so people, and you get much better in terms of managing them as well. Because it's one thing to deal with people, it's one thing to manage people, and it's one thing to manage people successfully. And that's probably one of the most hardest things to do, because you're thinking to yourself on this platform that I'm just going to go in there, get a job, the person's going to pay me, and that's it. Unfortunately, that's not the case. You have to play a certain role of marketing your skills. So there's a marketing component that comes into Upwork as well. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. You have to play a certain role of customer support, because someone's coming to you for support as well. So you're sort of, providing that customer support experience as well. Then you're playing the role of, your actual role itself of what you're offering on Upwork as well. So you're playing various roles over here. Dealing with people is a skill on its own that has its own nuances and ways of going about doing that. And until you don't master that through a client management process, you're always going to run into skills. And as I mentioned before, it's never going to be perfect. But if you follow the things that I mentioned in this video, I can assure you that you can significantly diminish the amount of issues that come up in terms of the number of issues, and also the severity of issues that come up. And I would love for everyone who watched this video to the end to share some of your experiences, some of the good experiences with clients, some of the bad experiences with clients, so that even in the comment section, we can discuss this further, and I can give you guidance on specific scenarios of how to improve that as well. Or if you want me to make videos on other topics as well on Upwork, please leave in the comment section, and I'm more than happy to do that for you.